Hello everybody, this is Logan Entertainment, and today's video we're going to be talking about 3 Five Nights at Freddy's mini-theories. Now these theories are going to be a little bit of a stretch, but I do think they are quite possibly true, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments down below. Without further ado, let's get to the first Five Nights at Freddy's mini-theory. It is still debated to this day as to who exactly Glamrock Freddy is. A majority of the people have thought that it could range from either Michael Afton or Henry Emily. However, I do have a possible idea that could most likely be a better suggestion that could most likely end this debate once and for all. I believe that Glamrock Freddy is actually the psychic friend Fredbear plush. You know, this guy. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that this is a big claim to make, but before anyone jumps to any conclusions, please hear me out. The Fredbear plush back in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 has always been written as a sort of a protector. One example being when the crying child is encouraged by the Fredbear plush to be brave, quite similar to how when Freddy in Security Breach encourages Gregory that there is nothing to be scared of when he enters the back room in Freddy's room. Another thing to point out is that in Security Breach, Glamrock Freddy is the main star of the Mega Pizzaplex, and back in FNAF 4, Fredbear was the main star of Fredbear's Family Diner. And given that both characters as well as both children have a friendship-like bond with these bears, I think it's more than just a coincidence, especially when in the parts and service levels when you defeat Glamrock Chica and replace Freddy's box with hers, Freddy's tie actually changes from a black bow tie to a purple one, which is honestly very strange but very interesting at the same time, as usually purple bow ties are associated with the characters known as Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. It is also kind of ironic, as of all the things that would cause this, it was replacing Freddy's voice box that gave him the purple bow tie, and as we know, the Fredbear plush also happens to have a purple bow tie, while also having the capability of speaking, which, as we know, the Fredbear plush has a built-in speaker inside, which was William Afton speaking through the Fredbear plush. Even Glamrock Freddy's protective nature is quite similar to the Fredbear plush and his protective nature as well. As I said, this theory is a big claim to make, but with the different pieces of evidence pointing this out, I honestly don't think it's a coincidence, especially when it comes to the connections as well as the bonds between these characters that really seem to point out that there is indeed a connection. But like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments down below. Without further delay, let's get to theory number 2. The world of Five Nights at Freddy's has always been unique and has had a diverse number of characters, and it seems that with modern Five Nights at Freddy's, there at least seems to be a connection to older ones. Glitchtrap is the modern version of William Afton, Edwin Murray seems to be the modern version of Henry Emily, Gregory is the modern version of the Crying Child, Vanessa is the modern version of Elizabeth Afton, and while there isn't necessarily an older character from the old FNAF timeline that connects to Cassie, technically it has basically been confirmed that Cassie is actually the daughter of the Bonnie Bro bully from FNAF 4, as hinted at in Help Wanted 2, as well as Ruin. And then we have Michael Afton. It's hard to say exactly as to who his character connects to, especially when I mentioned that that Glamrock Freddy is most likely a modern representation of the psychic friend Fredbear plush. So what if I told you that Michael Afton is most likely the Mimic? Now I'm sure you guys are thinking that this is a big claim to make, but like I said before, just hear me out. While these two characters have different personalities, their past is actually quite similar. Both characters were tasked to keep an eye on a child. Both characters unintentionally caused this child to die. They both end up getting physically and psychologically abused after the event for being blamed for something that wasn't necessarily entirely their fault. Both characters at one point wear a mascot costume, and at one point both characters end up getting scooped. With all the connections out of the way, it's time that I bring up one question that would completely overhaul the claims that I just made. And that question being, if the Mimic is supposed to represent Michael, why is the Mimic evil and Michael isn't? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. The Mimic is just an evil version of Michael, a version of what Michael could have become, but thankfully didn't. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. And without further delay, let's get to the third Five Nights at Freddy's theory. The first Help Wanted was the milestone as well as the beginning of the new timeline in Five Nights at Freddy's, and as we originally anticipated, Glitchtrap was originally thought to be William Afton reincarnated through the use of scanning circuit boards through the VR system. With what we know now, it has basically been confirmed that Glitchtrap is not William Afton, but rather is the Mimic 1 programming recreating William Afton's evil. But there is one thing that always bugged me. How is it that the Mimic 1 program would know to copy William exactly out of everything else? I do believe that I have solved this issue. We will, however, have to start with talking about the Mimic 1 program. Despite the Mimic 1 program being an old piece of technology, it was super advanced. Not only is it capable of mimicking everything that it sees, but it can also adapt and advance in ways that it originally wasn't meant to be programmed. In the 6th Tales from the Pizzaplex book from the story of the Mimic, on page 167, it has stated, quote, "Edwin got up and walked over to his son. 'What are you doing?' he asked. David looked up and grinned. Then he looked back at Mimic. 'Is it ready?' he asked Mimic. Mimic nodded. Edwin's brows rose. This wasn't mimicking, it was responding. When had that happened?" End quote. From what I just read to you, the Mimic 1 program isn't just capable of mimicking everything it witnesses, but it can also advance far beyond than what it's originally programmed to do. This is what I think what happened when Fazbear Entertainment scanned the circuit boards into the Help Wanted VR game. When the Mimic 1 program was inside the VR game, it started to notice that there were a lot of things to mimic, and as I already established, the Mimic 1 program is programmed to mimic everything that it sees. But there is one issue that the Mimic 1 program didn't realize. Because that there was so many different things to mimic, it couldn't simply just mimic everything all at once. So it did what it did best. It started to do things beyond just simply mimicking. It started to make copies of itself. Because of this, each and every copy would mimic different types of characters as well as their behaviors. However, during this process, there was one copy in particular that would cause the downfall as well as the continuation of everything that we know of in Five Nights at Freddy's. This one copy would start to copy William Afton's evil, resulting in the birth of Glitchtrap. Within Help Wanted, there are actually two versions of Glitchtrap. There's this version, and then there's this version. Just by looking at these two characters, you can definitely see that there's a difference. The Glitchtrap on the left is a little more green and has glowing purple eyes, whereas the Glitchtrap on the right has all of the qualifications to be a Spring Bonnie-like variant. The interesting thing that I want to point out is that the Glitchtrap is all green and has purple glowing eyes. This is the AI recreating the Spring Bonnie that is whole. Now the reason being is that within Help Wanted in the Pizza Party minigame, we actually see Glitchtrap. The funny thing is that usually we see Spring Bonnie in his yellow version after we collect all the tapes. I believe that the yellow version of Glitchtrap that we are seeing is the in-game recreation of what Spring Bonnie could have looked like, whereas the green version of Glitchtrap is the AI recreating him. Eventually, the AI recreating Glitchtrap will start to completely take over this character within the game, starting to become the new version of William Afton. However, it starts to realize that the world that it is in is not real, and it wants to escape. We do learn that Tape Girl creates these logs to try and document herself testing the VR game, but we also do learn that Glitchtrap connects itself to these tapes for some reason, possibly to preserve itself in case if anything happens. Eventually, we do know that Glitchtrap escapes from Help Wanted, taking over Vanessa's mind. It does, however, want to have its own physical body, so it creates a copy of itself and implants it into Vanessa's mind, making her a servant, or as you could say, a reluctant follower. Although, thinking about it now, it is quite possible that both of these versions of Glitchtrap is quite possibly different. There's one version that's just a copy of Glitchtrap, and there's one version that is the original. It is a big stretch to make, I will admit that, but I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to check out these content creators as well, as they are really good at making FNAF theory videos. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.